Domestic violence could include physical, emotional, sexual or psychological abuse, with women being the most victims. This, amongst other reasons, is why this month has been dedicated to remember victims and survivors while raising awareness of violence and its effect on families and communities. Ndidi Taiwo-Ojo joins me in the studio to discuss ways to tackle this menace. She is a legal practitioner and executive director of Stop the Abuse Against Women and Children Foundation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Every year, October is a month, earmarked to raise awareness with regards to, excuse me, once again, to domestic violence. And in this part of the world, we regularly commemorate that. Recently, a report by the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team reported that between January 2020 and December 2020 last year, that 91% of women were victims of gender-based violence. And I'm wondering, we raise awareness. How come we are still seeing and recording this kind of number?
I think a lot has to do with our society.
Right.
Our society is a society that has reduced women to chattels. We see our society sees women as inferior, as second-class citizens. So, and we have traditions and customs that allow women to be chastised now, in quotes. So really? They do not see women beating women or, beating women as a form of violence. They believe it is correction. So we will still continue to have these statistics until the mindset of our people is totally reorientated.
The reorientation now does that have to do with just the abuser? How about the abused? Because there's also the part of those being abused, not knowing that they are being abused.
Exactly. And then the stigma, discrimination that comes with you taking a decision to leave an abusive home is something also that has made the abused, the victim now, to continue to stay in these abusive homes. You see women being told she gets husband. If she doesn't have a husband, she's believed to be...
She's not complete.
Not complete. That's the word. She's not complete. And you see these women, I see this on every day. It's sad. You see women who are even educated, who have money, as in they have their own economic power, and they are still being abused. But because of the stigmatization and discrimination, they stay put.
So how can we begin to, shred this fabric off and ensure that we reorientate people on the part of the abused and the abuser? Let's begin with the abused, who do not even understand that they are going through abuse. What are the pointers? What are the signs that people should know that, you are being abused as we speak?
Okay. For some of the pointers, there are a whole lot, but I will just highlight some of them. When you are being intimidated, you do not have a voice, you walk around eggshells in your home. That's it. When the man of the house, especially when it's because most times the abuse is always, the survivor is always a woman. But we do have sometimes when the survivor is a man. Yes.
Okay, we'll get there. All right.
But when most times you are not given a voice, you are not supposed to say something, you are being talked down on, like insultive words, like, what do you know? I'm speaking, you are speaking. Then a man who cannot provide for you fully is telling you not to work because he knows that if you have economic power, it's going to, challenge his ego now, in quotes. You see a victim who, when he sees this, when it's violence, aggression, from these abusers to the victims, you begin, also when you see a woman who becomes very cold, or let's say now the victim becomes very cold when he sees the abuser and trembles, But when the abuser is not around, she's free to talk or something, you begin to notice and know that, oh, this may be signs of, abuse. For us, is a red flag.
So how about, you mentioned that there's also the aspect that this issue of abuse is not just limited to women alone.
Yes.
You talked about men also being abused. And I'm wondering, because some persons will say men being abused, how so?
Well, actually, I run a foundation that has to do with women and children.
Right.
And at times, some of these women come to reports. And because of experience, we actually most times invite the abuser in quotes. And sometimes we do our investigation and we find out that the man is not the abuser. The woman who has come to report is even the abuser.
Really?
Yes. And most times, the most form of abuse that is meted out to the man is sexual abuse, sexually withdrawal of sexual relation between a husband and a wife.
Denying him.
I have a case where 5 years, because she knows her husband, is a pastor, he may not be able to come out, to say what he's going through, and he also knows that, and she also knows that, he may not have, the opportunity or the privilege to have, sexual relations with other people other than her. So that is an abuse. We also have where women actually physically beat the man because the man has been raised not to lay his fingers on a woman. We have cases like that. So it's funny, but
wow.
Abuse is not gender relative.
Right. Now, one of the misconceptions of abuse is that it is limited to physical. It is limited to it's just been physical. But then help us better understand what else is outside of this physical, where a person is not being perhaps beating and all of it. What else happens for people to know that you are being abused?
In fact, I'm going to tell you something. Physical abuse is, I would say, one of the fastest healing kind of abuse we have when it comes to domestic violence, because the scars heal.
Right.
But the worst is when it is psychological, when it is emotional, when your self-esteem is robbed of. You are believed you cannot amount to anything, you cannot be anything.
That never heals.
That never heals.
Except there is some help.
Except there is some help, but even at that, it's trauma. And trauma can be triggered.
Right.
Do you understand? So it's, even when you get this counseling, you get this psychological evaluation and support, you could get the trigger and then it happens. But the thing is, not to go without help is even more dangerous, because then you see people actually breaking down, having psychiatric breakdown. You understand me? So most of the times we talk about only physical abuse, and when you go to the court, they'll say, when you go to the police station to go and report, they'll say
evidence.
There's no evidence. But what are they talking down? What if when your spouse calls you a slut, calls you impotent, calls you
names.
2 minutes man, these are names that actually, erode people's confidence. And at the end of the day, you find out that they become psychologically attached to this person because they believe they begin to experience what we call Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Because they believe that this is the only person who has accepted them the way they are. They don't even have the confidence to even venture out of that circle of abuse. So, and the more they're in that circle, the more they get abused.
Right. Now, you mentioned something, this aspect of evidence, because in this part of the world, it is said that the wheel of justice, winds slowly.
Very slowly.
And so, where there is no evidence, how do you get justice? Which is also being said to fuel this culture of silence as well. It's like a monster with a hydra-headed monster.
That is what it is.
So how do we deal with all of these things?
Well, I thank God because over the years, advocacy and sensitization on domestic violence has improved greatly. Now I am aware that DSRVT actually has a psychology and counseling session. So even when you don't have physical evidence, you know, they refer you because you come to report, I've been under abuse, psychological, emotional, you know, withdrawal of economic power and all that. They refer you to the psychology and counseling unit. The evidence that comes from this unit because it's a report by certified medical doctors, certified psychiatrists. This evidence could also be used in support of the woman's claim when she gets to court. So it's not just the physical evidence, the psychological and counseling units, the evaluation could also help the woman to get justice
at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
Right.
But more often than not, when it comes to issues that doesn't have to do with physical beating, we encourage women to leave. Because the thing is this, without the physical evidence, people don't readily believe. So, and you may never get justice. So why don't you leave to preserve your sanity? Because the truth of the matter is when you get to the courts, when you get to most psychiatric hospitals, you see women that we actually do outreaches, you know, and we see these women in this hospital most often than not. It is cases of domestic violence, emotional torture, the psychological torture that makes them end up having a psychiatric breakdown. Right.
So it is better for them to leave than to have those breakdowns that, you know, and bring them to the psychiatry at the end of the day. But let's talk about challenges in the wheel of justice. What you are in this field, talk to us the challenges you have faced while trying to, you know, get justice for certain persons. There are cases where it has been said that some persons just say, you know what, I want to withdraw the case against this person. You know, so many reasons. Talk to us the challenges you face.
You know, if not for the passion I have for women and children, in fact, my organization, what we are doing now more often than not, than going for the legal justice, is to empower the women who do not have economic empowerment. Right. There was a matter I did. I left the police station, tried to get the man arrested, and left the police station around 12 a.m., you know, trying to make sure that the man, you know, is arrested and the woman is saved, because I had to rescue her. And the following day, the woman sent me a text and told me that, I'm sorry, I've reconciled with my husband.
Really?
And then the DP was my ride or die. And he has the man as a DP. And this is a man who almost used a hammer on her, you know, a sledgehammer on her. So, yes, and then you begin to wonder, well, they're adults, so we cannot make choices for them.
Right.
So they have to make that choice. If they were underage, if they were minors, we could make that choice for them, you know, within the ambit of the law. But they are adults, and we cannot force them to, you know, leave their husbands. So in these kind of cases, it's actually demoralizing because, you know, you actually endanger your life, you know, trying. And don't forget that most of these abusers have mental issues. Some of them have stalking tendencies. I had someone that actually was trying to trail me at one time, yes, because they believe that you have taken their wife from them, you have taken their victim from them. You know, with the victim that they have power. Right. Most of these abusers do not have the kind of confidence they have in their home outside. So it's in their home that they fulfill this fetish now, or this fantasy of being a man or being, you know, superior. So at the end of the day, you who came to rescue, you become a victim in court now. So we have that issue. We have the fact that the government is not even doing enough to make sure that when these cases get to courts, they are duly prosecuted and charged. It's fair in Lagos, but I can tell you that many other states, it is not like that. You go and report, they say it's husband and wife issue. Yes, will say it's family issue. Go and reconcile within yourself. You see a woman who has cried. I have cases like that. You know, women go to the police station, but because the police are not even gender trained, you know, they do not even know about domestic violence and the woman's rights. You know, they'll tell her, go and everybody is suffering in their marriage. Everybody is tolerating each other. Go home and go and tolerate your husband. You want to live in, you want to have a broken home. This is the person, these are the frontliners that they are supposed to go to, who are supposed to give them shelter. You know, I also went with a woman one time to go, she needed to pick her things. She was able to escape the night the man nearly killed her. He brought out a knife, nearly killed her. She was able to escape. So she came to meet me, okay, that I want to go and pack my things. And we went to the police station. The police did not know. In fact, the DPO didn't know that under the law, he's supposed to give her protection to go and pack her things. He was telling her, no, you have to go and get a divorce before I can follow you. So that is it.
So invariably, there's still a lot of training to be done.
A lot of trainings.
There's still a lot of raising awareness that has to be done.
Yes.
And then there's still a lot of empowering of most of these victims that have to be done in case they want to move out of their home so that they can be independent. Because most of them always complain that if I leave, who takes care of my children?
So these are things that we need to look at. We also need to look at the access to legal justice. It is very imperative that when a victim, a survivor wants to get justice, there should be the access. Not just the access, speedy access to justice. Not when you will be in court 4 or 5 years. You know, that is, you know, traumatic for the survivor.
Absolutely. And that would be a fine place to leave this conversation this morning. Ndidi Taiwo-Ojo, thank you so much for your time. She is a legal practitioner and executive director of Stop the Abuse Against Women and Children Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.